I'm Yvonne Rohrbacher, and this is Queer News Tonight Overtime. Let's queer up the trans rights. The Supreme Court will hear a case that will change trans rights forever. The U.S. Supreme Court will take up U.S. versus Skrmetti on December 4th, marking its first case on gender-affirming care for transgender minors. At the center of the case is Tennessee's Senate Bill 1. This bill was signed into law by Republican Governor Bill Lee in March 2023 and bans puberty blockers, hormone therapies, and surgeries for minors seeking gender transitions. 3 families of transgender children and Dr. Susan Lacy of Memphis, represented by Lambda Legal, the ACLU, and other advocates, are challenging the law. They argue it violates equal protection and due process under the Constitution and the Affordable Care Act's anti-discrimination provisions. Samantha Williams, one of the plaintiffs, described the law as devastating. "We don't want to leave Tennessee, but this legislation would force us to either routinely leave our state to get our daughter the medical care she so desperately needs, or to uproot our entire lives and leave Tennessee altogether. No family should have to make that kind of choice." The ACLU highlights the law's double standard, permitting hormones for cisgender youth while denying them to transgender minors diagnosed with gender dysphoria. This case has far-reaching implications, with advocates warning it could pave the way for broader restrictions on health care access, including abortion and birth control. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, representing the Biden administration, stressed the urgent need for clarity, noting the profound uncertainty facing families due to lower court divisions. The Supreme Court's decision could either bolster bans in other states or reaffirm the rights of transgender youth. With the court's conservative shift since its 2020 pro-LGBTQ Bostock ruling, advocates on both sides await a potentially landmark decision affecting not just transgender care, but broader health care rights. And you know, there have been 20 in the last 3 years similar laws introduced in other states, and most of them have already been vetoed by their governor, partially for the same reasons that you would see this particular law as not being reasonable, such as every medical association or governing body in the country disagrees with them. Mm-hmm. They don't care, obviously. They have absolutely no experts or anything in writing stating that this is a good idea.
And they don't care.
And they don't care, again. And the fact that there are already some arguments out there about non-discrimination and protection under the law, listen to their answer to that. There is no precedent in American history that says that it's an embedded right for parents to make health care decisions for their children.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
Mm. What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, you know, I just continue to think that, like you said, we have seen these type of bills, they've been overturned by governors, but we know at one point one's not going to be.
Yeah.
It's imperative that it's going to happen. And what that does says a lot. And I just keep thinking about, you know, the diagnosis that they give and give the youth when they're calling, you know, the dysmorphia. And I'm like, who created that term? To use that now as a diagnosis term that you cannot get care. Because that's the way I'm seeing that. So you classify them as one way, and then you can deny their care. And I struggle with that.
You know, we're watching the utter destruction of an entire class of people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, frankly, Yvonne, to the note observations you make, they do not care about that. Yeah. The Trump campaign spent $35 million to paint Kamala Harris as somebody who was supporting trans surgery and prison. To her failure, frankly, she doesn't address the issue that was a That was a medical policy under the Trump administration, and she was a senator that didn't overturn it, but it was run by the Trump administration. That $35 million was very strategic. It was one of the top winning issues of this election on November 5th in a very substantial number of Americans believing that commercial. They believed it. It was a complete lie, but they believed it. But the end result was radical positioning against trans in America was designed to make that a winning political issue.
Yes.
That's why we're watching the bathroom ban in the Capitol. Who cares what bathroom that new representative from Delaware is going to use?
None of them actually care.
Nobody cares. But it is a political issue. That's why this case is so critical. We're watching the destruction of an entire class of citizens in America. The next 4 years, there's no one that's going to be harmed more by what happens in the next 4 years. And here's the issue that I think is so important about the Supreme Court. There's a chance that the Supreme Court will side on trans health care because they have a great difficulty trying to justify equal protection of the law. It does not apply. A parent that makes decisions, healthcare decisions for their child, to say that those rights will be taken away from you, and somebody that is 19 years old can make a decision on trans health care, but they're 17 years old and can't make decisions, then it allows the decision maker of that Supreme Court justice to say, are we going to allow the government to make that decision for the 17-year-old, or are we going to allow the parent? Equal protection is a critically powerful argument. There's a chance that the radical GOP will not win even in this Supreme Court function because, my goodness, it would open a door on equal protection that would be just unprecedented in America.
Yeah.
So we don't know what's going to happen in the court, but we do know what the radical GOPs, they are going to destroy the community if they can. That's why you hear, I'm going to eliminate trans on day one. We'll see. We'll see. The other thing that I think is really concerning to me on this court case is what the LGBTQ community is going to do. Because there is a very significant percentage of our own community, and especially gay men.
And it was very obvious by this election. And it was and it made me like sit there and go, who are my neighbors? Do I know my neighbors well enough?
I think a lot of those people misunderstand. We didn't start that fight as part of this campaign. He did. But
to the point that you go, but they don't care. I think there's a lot of us in our community that are going quietly still, but still percolating higher and higher. We don't care. And we're willing to say, let's separate ourselves from that community.
But they've never been not part of the tent. They've always been part of our tent. They've always fought for us. No matter how you look at them, gender nonconforming people are our tent.
Yes. And if you go back to Stonewall in 1969, with the first rocks and bricks and who stood
I'm only suggesting to you, I agree with you.
They don't go, none of those people go by male names that are still alive. What does that tell you?
People that are radical don't care. I think there's a lot in our own community that don't care. And they don't care that they picked up the first brick at Stonewall.
But the apathy and the lack of unification is going to hurt us more than unify us and give us strength. And I think we need to say to all of our folks within LGBT community that we need to support our trans brothers and sisters because, you look at the Holocaust, they came for one group and then they came for the next.
That's right.
And I don't want to be extreme, but if you want to go to the far right and the propaganda that's out there right now where the realities, we could go that direction, and I hope we never do.
We've got to end the conversation here in overtime. But one thing that this Supreme Court hearing and the decision won't come out. Watch, it won't come out until June of next year, perhaps on June 28th. That's when we're going to hear the conclusion. But I go back to that scene in Gone with the Wind, when the Sherman troops are circling Atlanta and they, in this very scary narrative voice, say, well, everybody is breathlessly waiting on the outcome. That's what this reminds me of. This case is so significant for a gigantic percentage of members of our community, and I'm fearful about
If we lose,
where
it's
we're
going to be a very slippery slope, and not just for us.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I know we have to move, and this has been Queer News Tonight Overtime. There's no other LGBTQ nonprofit media platform like this one in the world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing.